Now, I've got a couple of dilemmas with my FPL team at the moment. Do I triple captain Erling Haaland, and what am I going to do with Quansah? Here is my team selection for Game Week 2. I thought I'd start the video just by talking about how my team got on in Game Week 1. So I had Dean Henderson in goal, Quansah, Lewis Hall and Guardiola in my defence. I'm actually really happy with Lewis Hall and Guardiola. They both kept a clean sheet. Lewis Hall looks to be the nailed-on Newcastle left-back. I don't think, the fact they went down to 10 men basically, I don't think the whole game was a good example of how attacking Lewis Hall could be. Obviously going down to 10 men is going to kind of restrict how attacking he is. And likewise Guardiola as well. While Rico Lewis was in the team, Pep seemed to prefer Rico Lewis as that kind of attacking inverted fullback, which you would normally consider Guardiola to be. That's why I picked him in my team. So that's a bit of a shame, but you could ask the question, will Rico Lewis play every game for Man City? I think probably not. Walker gets good minutes this season in my opinion, which obviously means Guardiola I think gets opportunity as that sort of inverted left back where he's super attacking and super good. Bit disappointing from Dean Henderson. Didn't keep a clean sheet against Brentford. In fact, conceded 2 goals against Brentford. So yeah, quite disappointing there, but what can you do, right? I'm just going to stick by him. The reason I picked him was because I thought he'd get relatively consistent saves bonus and keep an average amount of clean sheets. Didn't happen against Brentford, but could well do in Game Weeks 2 onwards. Issue in my defence, and I'll talk about it in a bit more detail in upcoming bits of this video, but Quansah, they kept a clean sheet, did Liverpool against Ipswich, but Quansah was subbed at half-time. I'll talk a little bit more about that, but that's a problem that I have to deal with for Game Week 2. Gordon, Eze, Salah, Smith Rowe in midfield. Eze super unlucky not to get a return. I thought he played really well against Brentford. And the free kick that he scored, it shouldn't have been ruled out. The referee, trying to get my words out there, the referee literally admitted to making a mistake there. So what can you do, right? I feel super unlucky there. Gordon, did all right. 10 men Newcastle, scraped a 1-0 win against Southampton. 3 points, got a clean sheet. Same as, Smith Rowe got 3 points as well. Kept the clean sheet because he got subbed off before Man United scored the goal. He played all right. I don't think the Man United game was the one where I was really expecting him to score that many points. Salah did really well, a goal and assist, best performing player in my team. So I was pretty glad to have him as my captain. You can see my bench there. I could have started Robinson over Quansah, but there's 1 point in it, right? I scored 65 points, and that's my current overall rank, 2.3 million. Now, that's a pretty damn bang average game week, right? But I'm not too disappointed. I believe the average score was 57 across the game week. And given the fact I've got Erling Haaland, who is obviously got Ipswich in Game Week 2, a triple captain option, I think that really gives me a chance to hop above some players who might be a higher rank, but don't necessarily own him. It's very early on in the season. We've got 37 game weeks left to go. Plenty of time to climb the ranks. I'll take that as a start. So defensively then, I'm going to start off by talking about the defenders I'm going to pick for Game Week 2. The first issue I've got is one of Jarell Quansah. Now, the fact that he got subbed at half-time doesn't really matter all that much to me. I'd be perfectly happy just to leave him in my team. But the one thing that does worry me is how many players are going to sell him as a result. Looking at the Fantasy Football Hub price change predictor tool, there's a link to join Fantasy Football Hub in my description. They're predicting at the moment for his price to change tomorrow. It might have already happened at the time that I'm making this video, right? So he's going to go down to 4.4 million. It looks very likely that's going to happen before the Game Week 2 deadline. And if he does go down to 4.4 million, what it means is that you can only replace him with a defender of 4 million. All the defenders that go down to 4.4 are probably going to be non-starters, and you're not going to be able to straight replace him later towards the deadline at least for a 4.5. So I absolutely hate making early transfers, but in this particular situation where you've got no football between Game Week 1 and 2, just training, I think, there was obviously a risk that players could pick up injuries in training, etc. But I think as times go within the season, an early transfer between Game Weeks 1 and 2 is as least risky as it gets. I'm of the mind now because he's going to go down in price. And like I said, if he does, you can only replace him with a 4 million defender. I think I'm going to sell Quansah. And I've got a couple of options, a few options that I'm considering. First up, Rico Lewis. At face value, expected points-wise and Man City clean sheet odds according to Drafthound, he looks fantastic. Man City have got Ipswich, West Ham and Brentford as their next 3. 2 of those games, they're more than 50% to keep a clean sheet in. And Brentford, they're 48. So it basically means they're heavily backed to keep a clean sheet in all 3 of those games. And having watched the Man City v Chelsea game, Lewis was the attacking inverted fullback that you would normally expect Guardiola to be. And Guardiola was sat basically in the back three for most of the game. And a really good game against Chelsea as well, by the way, did Lewis. And I think based on his performance against Chelsea, he probably starts against Ipswich. I think it'd be really harsh for Pep Guardiola to leave him out. But then we get to the West Ham and Brentford games, two teams I'd consider to be a little bit more physical, I guess. More threat from set pieces. You could probably see Walker starting those games, or at least I would probably think Walker does, just for a bit more physicality against West Ham and Brentford. So Rico Lewis looks great for the Ipswich game, but I would just be really worried about rotation. I feel like if I sell Quansah and buy Lewis, I'm resolving one rotation problem with another, even if I think Lewis is one of the best defenders, if not the best defender in the game for Game Week 2. Ipswich at home, a fantastic fixture, heavily backed to keep a clean sheet and looks really attacking. But, you know, if I'm making a transfer for a player that's not nailed, I want to at least pick one that's going to play. So I'm probably not going to go for Lewis. The two players that I am eyeing up, I'm looking at Lewis Dunk and Levi Colwill. Now, Lewis Dunk, I would say, is definitely the more nailed of the two, and probably, to be honest, offers a little bit more attacking threat. I don't think Colwill offers all that much from set pieces, whereas Lewis Dunk is a big threat from corners and free kicks. But I can't... Looking at those Chelsea fixtures, right, the next 6 fixtures for Chelsea are absolutely fantastic. I do think Colwill's probably now to start. I get the feeling that he's one of Enzo Maresca's favourites in defence. I think Colwill and Fofana is going to be the centre-back partnership that he goes with. I can't say for definite that that's the case. Chelsea, just as we know, they have so many players, whereas Lewis Dunk is the club captain for Brighton and plays every game that he's fit for. So yeah, my decision, I would say, is between these two guys. I like Colwill for those 6 fixtures, and it just means that at any point in time, I'd be happy starting Colwill over those 6, whereas Lewis Dunk, I wouldn't want to start him against Man United, I wouldn't want to start him against Arsenal, I wouldn't want to start him against Chelsea, and I wouldn't want to start him against Spurs. There's only 2 games in those next 6 where I'd be genuinely comfortable playing in, whereas Colwill, if he needed to come in any of those 6 games, I wouldn't be too worried about it. So I think you kind of understand or gotten to the end of my decision. So defensively then, for Game Week 2, this is how I'm going to line up. I'm not actually going to play the player that I'm bringing in, but hopefully you can see my logic for making the transfer regardless. I know it's only 0.1 million, but I still want to keep my team value. I think going from a 4.5 to a 4 million defender is such a big jump. I just don't want to be doing that in Game Week, well, between Game Weeks 1 and 2. So I'm going to go Henderson, Guardiola, Lewis Hall, Robinson as my starting defenders. You can see there, Colwill actually has more expected points than Lewis Hall does, but I just think Hall brings with him so much more attacking output than Colwill does. So for that reason, I'm going to start Lewis Hall. Bentley on my bench, I mean, he's never going to feature. I've gone for Colwill and Ben Johnson. I didn't even talk about him. Ben Johnson didn't actually play against Liverpool in Game Week 1. So my 4 million defender that I thought was more likely to start than Barco was exactly the same starting odds. They both didn't start. They both got benched. So I am a little bit worried about Johnson there, but I still have enough cover on my bench, even if he doesn't play. All right, so looking a bit more at midfielders then, and I guess the one bit of news to come out of Game Week 1 was Bryant and Mbeumo and just Brentford as a whole. Tony didn't start for Brentford in Game Week 1, and it looks, by all accounts, that he's going to leave. Whether that be to Saudi Arabia, another country, or another Premier League team, not 100% sure yet, but I think that the fact that Thomas Frank left him out of the team, considering all the drama he made for Brentford last season, and he still played a majority of the games, I think that's quite telling. Now, when Tony's not in the team, Bryant Mbeumo is just an absolutely fantastic FPL option, right? He's 7 million, and he's just going to be the absolute talisman for Brentford on penalties, free kicks. And if you look here, I've taken this tweet from Rob T FPL on Twitter. If any of you have seen my pre-season content, I've used a lot of Rob T FPL stats because basically he takes betting odds and turns them into something useful for FPL. So projection, goal projection algorithms, etc. That's kind of his trade. And the reason I really like looking at betting odds and, you know, sort of moving that on to FPL is because bookmakers spend so much money on predicting outcomes of football games because they make so much profit off of it. They're the most accurate, in my mind at least, the most accurate projection algorithms, odds, whatever you want to call them, that you can get. So I really pay attention to what he has to say. And as a result of Tony being benched and potentially leaving Brentford, the bookies have changed their odds where they're predicting Mbeumo to score 26% of Brentford's goals this season, not including the amount of assists that he could get as well. Last season, Brentford scored 56 goals in the Premier League. So rough analysis, 26% of 56. You can work it out yourself. But it's pretty close to around 15 goals this season, right? I would back him probably to score 15 goals, particularly if Tony's not in the team. And he could well get double-digit assists as well. The link-up that he's got with Wissa, I really, really like. And I think the two of them will set each other up across the season. I really like Brian and Bumo. I just don't think now is the right time to bring him into my team. He'll definitely be in my team come later points in the season, particularly when the Brentford fixtures take a turn for the better. Right now, I don't think I can quite bring him in, but I really wanted to talk about him because he's a player that I've really got my eye on. All right, so my midfield then, I'm going to go Salah, Eze, Gordon and Smith Rowe. Not really a whole lot to say here. I've picked these four and to be honest, I'd back them to start against pretty much any team. Salah against Brentford on 8 expected points. Obviously had a really good game against Ipswich. I'm hopeful he can do something against Brentford. Eze, really unlucky as we all know against Brentford last week. I'm hoping he can get some attacking returns against West Ham, particularly at Selhurst Park. I think he'll have a good game. Gordon's got Bournemouth away. I think that's a decent fixture for him. And Smith Rowe has got Leicester at home. I really like that fixture. Obviously, Leicester got a good result in Game Week 1 against Tottenham, but I don't think any of the promoted teams are going to be all that good defensively. And I think if Smith Rowe was to ever have a good chance of getting some attacking returns, it's against the promoted teams. And he has 2 promoted teams in game weeks 2 and 3. So yeah, I really like him as an option. As you can see there, I've got Winks on my bench. I mean, I've just picked him basically as my midfield bench fodder. I'm never really going to start him, but he's there if he's needed. Okay, then on to the forwards. And like I said in my intro, the big question for me this week is, do I triple captain Erling Haaland? I put a couple things together. You may have seen these in my previous videos, to be honest, but a couple bits of information for you together just to work out if it's the right thing to do. I've done a basic pros and cons list first, right? I'd say benefits of doing so. He's got a newly promoted team at home in Ipswich. I would say Haaland, he traditionally performs better at home than he does away. He's fit, ready to go, no issues with him. Later on in the season, you might not be able to say that. I've always found that the triple captainship is usually a little bit disappointing, so sometimes I just want to get it out of the way. Double game weeks are apparently less likely this season. I do have a bit more information about that coming up. And a lot of people right now don't have Haaland. I think this particular point of the season is Haaland's lowest ownership point in time, right? There's not going to be another time this season where he's at a lower ownership. So if you want to triple captain him and get ahead of the crowd who don't currently have him, now is the time to kind of do that. That's my thinking there. In terms of cons, I don't actually think Ipswich are the worst team in the league. Certainly not the worst promoted team. I do think Leicester and Southampton probably be a bit defensively worse. That's something to say given, you know, the results were different in Game Week 1. But that's my belief at least. And of course, it's only Game Week 2. There could well be double game weeks and there could be better opportunities just in general to use it later on. And I'm not saying this is the case. He'll probably do all right against Ipswich. But Haaland, you know, we've all seen games where Haaland just disappears sometimes. You know, teams sort of, 2 men mark him basically. He sort of gets marked out of the game and then other players bring themselves in. And that's how Man City can sometimes win. And also, I don't think he really offers that much when he's not in the box and tapping balls in the goal or scoring great goals. You know, I don't really think he gets all that involved in sort of build-up play. So he can disappear in some games. I'm not necessarily saying that's the case against Ipswich, and I'm not calling him a bad player, but I would say that's a con for triple captaining him. So I very graciously received a reply from Ben Crellin on Twitter the other day. I asked him, I'm looking to triple captain Erling Haaland. What do you rate the chances of there being double game weeks later on in the season, right? That's what he had to say. He's telling me basically to not do it. But that's not the only thing I'm looking at. I also, you know, those pros and cons that we just looked at. And I think one of the really important things when it comes to triple captains is trying to use it on a double game week. So what I'm trying to work out here is when potential double game weeks could be coming, how they come about, which fixtures, which teams have to blank, how far they have to get in the cups, etc. And also which fixtures, which teams do they play on the particular game weeks where there could be a double. So you can work that out from these 3 tweets basically. So FPL Benchwarmers is saying the EFL Cup finalists will blank in Game Week 29 and double in 33. That means the teams that reach the final, their fixtures from 29 will be moved to 33 for a double. So the Game Week 29 fixture plus the 33 fixture. And then the FA Cup semi-final, they'll blank in 34 and double in 36. So Game Week 34 fixture will be moved to Game Week 36. Kind of how you have to read that. Now, FPL Gurus, thank you to all 3 of these guys, by the way. He's arranged 3 teams. I would say Maybe Cole Palmer's the other player I'd consider triple captaining, but if it were me and I was using my triple captain chip, I'd probably use it on Salah, Saka or Haaland. And we've got Liverpool, City and Arsenal's game weeks 29 to 36 fixtures here basically. So if you extrapolate all of that together, if that's the correct word, game week 29, if you were to triple captain Mo Salah, for example, you'd get Aston Villa and Leicester if they were to get to the EFL Cup final, or if they get to the FA Cup semi-final, you get Spurs and Arsenal. So that could be Salah. For City, it's Brighton and Everton if they get to the EFL Cup final, or for the FA Cup semi-final, they get Villa and Southampton. For Arsenal, Chelsea, Ipswich, or Palace, Liverpool. So for me, those are some pretty high-quality double game weeks, I reckon. Particularly, for example, if City have Brighton and Everton, or Villa and Southampton, I think that's pretty good. And likewise, I would say Arsenal with Chelsea and Ipswich, that's pretty strong as well. And Villa and Leicester for Liverpool as well is pretty good. So plenty of potential decent double game weeks coming up, providing these big teams get to the cup finals. Obviously, that all relies on these teams doing well in the cups and getting to that later stage. I think Man City, at least Man City and probably Arsenal do, right? So I think you can say the odds of them getting those double game weeks are relatively high. And even if, it's not those teams, other teams will, and they will still have double game weeks. So it's looking likely there will be 2 double game weeks this season, basically. So, and other opportunities, that means 2 opportunities to use your triple captainship. So with all that in mind, I'm getting slightly cold feet now about triple captaining Haaland. So here is how my front 3 is going to look then. I've got Haaland, Isak and Solanke. Don't have any intention to take any of them out of my team. And I'm just going to give Haaland the regular captaincy. I do think Ipswich at home could well be his best single game week of the season. But given what we've just seen there about odds of double game weeks happening, I think we could well see Haaland with a couple of double game weeks. So I'm going to sit on my hands and leave the triple captainship for another time. So yeah, Haaland, Isak, Solanke up front. And that's my team. One more thing I wanted to look at then was the Fantasy Football Hub expected points and AI rating. If you want to sign up to Fantasy Football Hub, there's a link in the description below. This team in Game Week 2 is projected to get 69 points and gets a 93% AI rating. I think that's pretty respectable. Let me know in the comments if there are any other transfers, changes, captaincy changes, whether you triple captain Haaland, etc. Just let me know what you think of my team in the comments. Alright, and that's the end of the video. Like I said, let me know what you think of this team in the comments. If you enjoyed the video and found it useful, please leave me a like rating. I don't really think I have much more to say, other than if you enjoyed the video and want to stick around, see more content from me, you can subscribe to the Goal to Goal channel. It should be just there on your screen. I appreciate this team selection video comes a little bit earlier than most YouTubers or I've ever made one, but there's no more football left to go until Game Week 2. We've got a decision to make about Quansah and his price going down. This is my big team selection decision, basically, and this is when I'm making it. So I'm just being open and honest about my team and sharing it kind of live with you guys. So yeah, thank you very much for watching, and I'll catch you in my next video.